everybody. Welcome back. We are so excited that you're here back with us today. We're going to continue on with Module F, F as in Fox. And we're just really excited that you're all here. I am Deidre. I am joined by my esteemed colleague, Rebecca, and we will be facilitating today's module for you. I want to thank you all for being in attendance, but I really want to highlight the drum group that came in today and welcomed us and really helped us start in a good, positive way for today's session. So thank you very much. We also want to thank our hosts for allowing us the space and all the support they've given us to hold all of our sessions up till now and the ones we have in the future. If I could have participants go ahead and take out your workbooks and turn to page F3, there's a prompt there that I'd like you to reflect on and take a few moments to answer. I'll give you a few minutes and then we'll come back and I'll see if anybody would like to volunteer and share their reflections. But the prompt is, what is one skill or lesson you would like to pass on to your child or children? All right, would anybody like to share? Cheyenne.
Um, I think based off of last week's module, I would like to pass on sort of the healthy coping mechanisms and emotion regulation to my children.
Oh, that's a really great answer. Emotional regulation is such a powerful way to transcend that trauma that we've been talking about thus far. So thank you for sharing that, Cheyenne. Would anybody else like to share? Olivia.
Hi, I had just written down that I would like my children to greet every person with kindness and open-mindedness.
That's a really great thing to pass on to children. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your answers. I know Rebecca and I enjoyed listening to kind of the chatter that was going on as you all were taking time to reflect and talking with your elbow partners. So at this time, I just want to take a moment and again thank our host, our sponsors, and the tribal organization that invited us here to do this today. Just a reminder, the bathrooms, I want to remind you where the bathrooms are located, any emergency exits, and plans for shelter in place in case we need them. And I'll give instructions for parking and any parking restrictions that you may need to know. And at this time, I would like to request that all participants silence your mobile devices. I know that outside our time together, life continues and things happen. We just to keep the spirit of our engagement here, could we just be respectful relatives and turn off our devices? Of course, you can step out if you need to. Don't forget to give Rebecca and I a thumbs up so that we know you're okay and that you don't need immediate emotional support. All right, just like every other one of our modules that we've covered thus far, we have some learning goals and objectives. So if I could have everyone please turn to page F2 in your participant workbook, we are going to go ahead and review the learning goal and the objectives. You can follow along in your workbook. Okay. So the goal of this module is to help parents identify what circle of support is and its impact on parenting, understand the strengths of webbing connections, and practice developing a parenting action plan. So to support that goal, our objectives for today are with circle of support, identify what a circle of support is and its impact to parenting. So we're going to continue with that idea of what a circle of support is. Webbing connections, identify the strength of connection to people, resources, and our community. And finally, we want you to leave with an action plan practice. So practice developing parenting action plans. So we introduced action plans last time. We're going to go a little bit more into it today. Before we get started, I'd like to just remind you all of our learning agreements and offer the opportunity to add anything that may have come up between the last session and now. I just want to check in and make sure that these learning agreements over here are all still things that we continue to agree on. So if you could just give me a thumbs up, if there's not anything to add, give me a thumbs up. Otherwise, I will go on. I see thumbs. Great. Thank you so much for that. I also like to give you a brief reminder in all of our other sessions, we've been able to clear out our parking lot and answer everything that's come up for people. We've not left cars over the week in our parking lot. So thank you for that. Continue to use it. We've inspired a lot of really great discussions through that. So please continue to use the parking lot. Our exit tickets are already at your table. Please use them to take notes or provide feedback. We're always interested in how we can help support you. So exit tickets are already on your table. We'll collect those at the end of today's session. All right. Well, let's get started. Any other housekeeping things? Doesn't look like it. So let's get started. You can follow along. We're going to start talking about roles and values. So if you turn to your workbook page F3, you can follow along there. So thinking back to Module A, what are some examples of different roles in raising a child that you remember? Olivia.
In Module A, we had discussed like coaches, tribal leaders, grandparents, cousins, and family friends.
Those are excellent examples. Thank you so much for that. Continuing to think about the things we talked about in Module A, I want to ask you all something else. What are some examples of parenting values that are still held today? And what has changed? Cheyenne, your hand went up really quickly. Let's see what you're thinking.
So I'm thinking about having time to be with relatives, participating in community events such as ceremony, and other traditional practices. And I think the way we do them now is different than how they were done years prior.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for those wonderful examples. In this module, we're going to be expanding on the roles and values discussions from Module A and discussing how these concepts connect with developing our circle of support. So to take us further in, I am going to tag in my colleagues. So I'm going to turn the time over to Rebecca.
Thank you, Deidre, and welcome back, everyone. It's good to see you all. On this next slide, we're just going to take a few minutes to reflect on the image, and you can find this image as well at the bottom of your workbook page on F3. Is anyone familiar with the saying, it takes a tribe to raise a child? See some head nods. Yeah, a little bit. Can someone share what they think it means? Yeah, Cheyenne, go ahead.
I think when I hear this saying, it sort of reminds me how important community can be in raising a child. It's sort of like a joint effort in providing that support.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great example. Thank you for sharing your reflection. When we think back to our discussion on roles and values, we want to make the connection to how those lessons and values are being taught and the roles of those people in our circle of support. So we're going to go into a little bit now about what a circle of support is. So I want to invite you all to turn to page F4 in your workbook. And in Module D, we talked about what is meant by having a circle of support and what it would look like to identify those who could be included in that circle. Circle of support strengthen individuals, families, and communities. And these relationships have traditionally helped to raise our children and support families. They help us to be resilient. And in each of our own circle of support, there may be many individuals we are connected with, or there may be very few that we are connected with. But being able to identify supportive individuals in our lives who can also be supportive in parenting our children is how we can practice resiliency and how values can be modeled. So we're going to move into an activity called Lessons of the Spiderweb. And there's going to be space in your workbook as well at the bottom of F4. And I want you to take some time to reflect on the image of the spider web that you see here on the slide, or you can look at your workbook. And I want you to pay attention to the characteristics that you notice or that you know of. And I'm going to give everyone just a moment to think about what characteristics of a spider web that you notice. So I'm wondering if I could have a volunteer to share any thoughts that you notice about how a spider might go about making its web. Maybe you noticed its shape, or maybe you thought of its location and how it might change depending on the environment or maybe the kind of spider it is. Do I have a volunteer who could share some thoughts? Yes, Olivia.
Yeah, the first thing that I had noticed was how interconnected everything is. From one string to another, there's some sort of connection. And I feel like that really demonstrates how strong and stable some circles of support can be, no matter the environment.
That's a really great example. Thank you for sharing. You're spot on. A spider's web has many things about it that make it strong and withstanding. And the spider is used in many traditional stories. And the wider a spider's web reaches, the better chance it has of catching food to eat. Spiderwebs are also unique in shape, size, and function. And one similar characteristic of all spider webs is that each strand, like you mentioned, Olivia, they're all connected to another strand. And the more connections it has with other strands, the more strength it has. So we each have our own circles of support, like the spider's web. And we want to imagine our circle of support as a spider web that connects us to additional individuals or maybe resources to further support us as parents. And so I'm going to take us into the next slide. And this next activity is called the webbing activity. On page F4, we're going to draw a small circle in the middle of that space that you see in your workbook. And this circle is going to represent you. You can draw yourself or you can write your name in this circle. And now on the next slide, we're going to pretend that we are spiders, and we're going to begin with supports or connections that are used most often. And so this could look like friends or families, connections that you can think of that are closest to you. And sometimes it's easier to start with family and friends. The goal is to name the ones that you use or reach out to the most often first. So that's going to be the kind of outer ring or those first connections around yourself. So next, you'll draw lines to connections that maybe you use less often or every once in a while. And so that could look like maybe the school, or maybe if you use a community resource like WIC, you're going to draw lines farther out and draw these lines to connections and supports that you may be aware of, or if you haven't used them yet. So maybe you know that they're there in your community, or maybe you know that they exist, but those are going to be the farthest from you. So you're going to want to think about as many examples as you can. So once you're done with family or friends, continue to draw lines that connect you to other supports in your community. If there are specific people that you work with in a program, or you know of in an organization, a school, or maybe within like a health environment, like a health clinic, then you're going to add another line and add that specific person's name, or maybe their title if you don't remember their name. And so we're just going to get more and more detailed as much as we can. And so that may be like a teacher at the school, or maybe there's a receptionist that you remember or you go to at the health clinic. You're going to include them in your web. So we're going to take 5 minutes to complete this activity. And it's really great to see everybody already writing some things down in their workbook. After 5 minutes on your own, we're going to ask everyone to spend another 5 minutes to share your web with your small group. And we're just going to use this group time to brainstorm together and possibly even web even further. So you'll all get to exchange ideas and share some thoughts about your webbing. So I'm going to give everyone a few minutes, do 5 minutes on your own, and then 5 minutes in a group. And Deidre and I will be walking around the room if you have any questions. All right, everybody, we're going to come back together again. It was really great to see all of the conversations that were happening and the sharing. Thank you so much for participating in this activity. Once you are done, I want you all to just notice the connections you started out with first. And I'm just going to ask a question out to the group. Did certain connections remind you of another connection? Did you notice those connections changed after you maybe shared your web? Yes, Olivia.
Yeah, while I was talking with my group, we started to talk about our children and their circles and how they're sort of interwebbed with ours. And I began to think about how involved I was with my child's school. Um, and I also had just like thought about how close I'd become to some of the teachers, to some of the student aides, and just like including them into my own web and how they've been supportive in helping me raise my child.
Those are excellent examples. Thank you, Olivia. Yeah, like sometimes we just don't realize all of the connections that we have until we're really like thinking about, oh yeah, like there's this person, and oh, and then there's this other person that I talk to or know of. So that's really great that you were able to kind of generate even more in your small group. Awesome. This activity exemplifies the importance of having a web of support. And even if you didn't gain any new ideas, having people support our ideas and affirm our responses can be so powerful in our parenting journeys. So thank you so much for sharing that. What are some ideas or ways we can strengthen our connections with either people or resources in our community if those connections maybe don't exist yet? Cheyenne, yes, please.
I think a good way to sort of expand our connections would be to attend community events to look at the local resources.
Awesome. No, that's another great example. Yeah, maybe attending an event that we haven't attended before, or maybe, going with somebody to a community, a community gathering. There's just so many opportunities, right? So thank you all. Thank you for participating in that webbing activity. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. I'm now going to hand it back over to Deidre, and she's going to take us through the next set of slides.
Thank you, Rebecca. We're going to be moving into a parenting action plan. So keep all these resources in mind, okay? Because we're going to keep building on the things that we're talking about. If you all could turn to page F5 in your workbooks. In Module E, we begin practicing using a parenting action plan as a way to think about how we might parent in challenging moments differently in the future. We learned a series of guiding prompts that can help us think through challenging parenting situations. If you remember, we talked about revisit, replay, practice, and reflect. If you all remember those steps from the last module, can I get thumbs up if you remember? Great, I see some thumbs, and if you don't, that's okay because we're going to review them here. All right, so step one, if you all remember, is revisit. And in this step, we want to revisit a parenting challenge. We want to replay it in step two. And replay is the time you want to replay this time in parenting that was hard in your mind. So replay it like a movie. In step three, we want to practice. Practice on your own or with someone to prepare for the next time. Step four, reflect. You want to reflect on the changes you have made to the parenting challenge. And if you all notice, there's the circle in the middle, and this just indicates that you can revisit this parenting action plan as many times as you need to. Now, if I could have everyone turn to page F5 in your participant workbook. There you'll see a quote. Parenting is a practice. It takes time and trying again and again. Not knowing what to do does not make us bad. As parents, we may have times when we don't know what to do. We are not taught how to respond to all the challenges being a parent brings us. However, we can learn to use the resources around us that can be helpful and supportive. Being able to think about our parenting when we're not under stress can help us to think more clearly and broadly of what each of our supports might look like. Think of a time when you had a parenting challenge, when you needed or would have benefited from additional support. Using this example, the one that you're thinking of, take 5 minutes to individually write down the answers to the questions in your workbook on page F5. And the questions are, what was the parenting challenge? How could additional supports have helped? What barriers or hesitancies came up when thinking about asking for additional support? So you're going to take time to reflect on the questions and write your answers down. Does anyone have any questions or need clarification about this activity? All right, I see some head nods. Don't see any hands raised. So great, let's get started. All right, everybody. Now that you've all had time to reflect, let's come back together as a group. And with your elbow partners, take some time and share with your small group some of the responses from your workbook. All right, everyone. Welcome back to the larger group. Wow, what robust conversations. Rebecca and I overheard some really great things. Thank you so much, everybody. I hope you all took notes in your workbooks because these were really great, fantastic conversations. We're going to go ahead and move into a break right now. We'll take 15 minutes. Please take care of yourselves. Remember, if you need some time to do some self-care, we have the self-care table in the back. Utilize it, lean into your own care. And in 15 minutes, we'll come back. And at that point, Rebecca will help us with the next portion of the module.
All right, everyone, we're going to come back together. We're going to dive into our next section of this module. I hope everyone had a good break and attended to whatever it is that you needed during that time. So right now we're going to go into the parenting action plan again. And I just wanted to just make an observation that working in your small groups really is an example of webbing in action. Since working in your small groups, we wanted to just make this observation that this really is an example of webbing in action. And we're now going to report out in our small groups a parenting challenge that we asked all of you to think about just before going into the break. But before we do that, we're gonna give everyone a little bit of time to just to get ready to before they present. And we're gonna walk through everyone these next set of workbook pages. I'm gonna ask you all to turn to pages F6 through F9 in your workbooks. And we're going to walk through each of these prompts together, okay? So the first one on page F6 is the step revisit. And the prompt here, I'm going to read out loud, but you'll also notice there's some space where you can write notes. You can write thoughts down when you're in your small group. So that's all there for you to take notes. So the first prompt is, think of a challenging parenting moment when you would have liked more support or would have wanted more information on what to do with your child. On page F7, the next step is replay. And the prompt here is, what were some challenges to getting more support at the time? Like what was a challenge? What things prevented you at the time from getting more support? Or was it a person or a thing? Or maybe there was distance, or maybe you felt like you couldn't access something. So we're really identifying, what was the barrier in that challenge from you getting the support that you needed. On page F8, the next step is practice. And here the prompt is, share how additional supports could have helped. Were these examples from your web, or do you need to add some? And the final step is on page F9. And this step is reflect. And we're going to allow some time in your small group to provide feedback or support, or to share any thoughts as we do this reflect practice here on this page. But first, we're just gonna ask you all to think about some things that you would like to write down, ideas that you have individually for about 5 minutes. But we're going to have about 25 minutes for this total activity. So Deidre and I, we're going to make sure that we're going to keep everybody on time and let you know when those transitions are happening. Okay. So let's all spend about 5 minutes to go over those prompts in your workbook, and we'll come back together as a large group. Now that you've been working on the prompt for a few minutes, we're now going to go and switch into our small groups. All right, we're coming to the close of our time here with this activity. It was really great to see all the conversations that are happening. I would like to invite everyone to focus on the prompts on page F9. We're gonna take some time to think about these ones as a group. I'm gonna read them out loud here, The first one is, how might you do things differently when another challenging moment comes up and you would like more support? And the second one is, what will you remind yourself when you don't know what to do? So I want to ask you all to take some time to jot some thoughts down for those two prompts. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for participating in that. Now I want to just take some time to ask, as part of a reflection of this activity, this will also be part of your homework tonight. What can I have a few volunteers to share what about what your experience was about this activity? What was going through your mind? Did any thoughts come up about this activity as a whole? What are some thoughts? Yes, Cheyenne.
I just found it really helpful to have the time to think about the support and strategies that I need. Just because sometimes I feel like I don't have a lot of time to do that.
Thank you so much, Cheyenne, for sharing. It's really great to hear. Any others? Yes, Olivia.
Yeah, it just felt really nice and affirming, reassuring to speak with a small group, and it made me feel not alone just because I feel like I'm hard on myself sometimes as a parent. So it was really nice to engage with other people in a small group.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. We're glad that we're hearing that this is useful and that you all are really doing some deep thinking about your own parenting and talking with each other about some really great strategies. So we're going to continue on, and one of the last activities that we're going to do for this module is we're going to now shift to the parenting action plan by looking back at challenges that we want to reflect on and imagining possibilities using praise and empathy as tools in your toolbox. So we're going to kind of do the same thing, right? We're going to think of a challenge, but we're going to think about how we could use praise and empathy. So using recall, replay, practice, and reflect, think about moments where praise and empathy can be used in parenting challenges. And these are going to be prompts in your workbook on page F10 through F12. So there's going to be some space there on these pages where you can, again, write down any thoughts or ideas. And I'm going to share some examples to think about. So, in regards to showing praise, when your child does something good, how can you offer words of encouragement with your child and share how proud it makes you feel of them? Are there opportunities within a challenging moment to find words of praise for what you are proud of about your child? And additionally, in a challenging moment, are there areas of growth that can be praised? For example, if you have done so well in taking on more responsibility, like taking out the trash or cleaning up after yourself in the bathroom. An area we still need to grow is cleaning your room. So these are all examples of praise. And we also want you to think about, what is age appropriate? Think about the age of your children, and how you might think of going about this. Another example we wanted to highlight here is in regards to showing empathy. And we would like you all to think about how can you offer words of understanding in a challenging moment. For instance, when your child makes a mistake, such as dropping the dishes or breaking them, we can share with them how scary and frustrating something like that can be. So my ask for all of you is to generate more ideas that you can practice in building praise and empathy. And we're going to take a moment to think about that. And then we're going to use the pages F10 through F12 in your workbooks to also ask you all to think of ideas and write them there as homework when you go home. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking time to reflect on those prompts there in your workbook. We just want to remind everyone that taking the first step in a parenting action plan is always the hardest. But the more and more that we continue to try, the more confident and creative we can become and in responding to your child. So thank you all so much. We're going to now go into the final slides of this module, and this is the reflection. This reflection is part of all the modules, and we just take some time out of our day to think about the training, think about the activities and the homework. So I'm going to walk us all through those. And I'm going to also ask you all to turn to page F13 in your workbook, and you're going to see these prompts as well. So there's one final activity before reviewing the homework and before we close. This session and future sessions can bring up some emotions, or sometimes we can feel heavy when we're having discussions. So in order for all of us to take care of ourselves, we're just asking you all to identify any resources or maybe activities for self-care that you might want to reach out to or use at the end of this session. And so on page F13, we're asking you to write down if you feel like you need more support, or maybe if there's a person that you can reach out and talk to. There's another prompt here that if there's an activity for self-care, what can you do? Also, if there's a resource that you may need, or if there's help that we can provide, we want you all to write those ideas down there. And Deidre and I are always here to also answer any questions or anything regarding the thoughts that you write down. We're here to support you as well. So give everybody a moment to do that. All right, everybody. So in closing, we want to just highlight briefly everyone's participation. It's been just so good to hear all of the thoughts and ideas that were happening in the small groups. And we want to review the homework now on page F9. So we're going to revisit this question again. How might you do things differently when another challenging moment comes up and you would like more support? And the other prompt here is, what will you remind yourself when you don't know what to do? And so we're going to ask everybody to spend a little bit of time after this module, when you go home, to think about these prompts, and also those that are on pages F10 through F12 in your workbook. These were the ones on using empathy and praise. And we heard some ideas, Deidre and I, as we were walking around the room today, just some really great ideas that were being shared. For example, we heard that asking a child just how they are, or acknowledging their feelings, is a really great example of empathy. Another example that I heard from another group around praise was, when a child is doing something well, that we're letting them know how we feel and how happy we feel about when they're doing something that makes us proud. So these are just a few examples, but we want you to come up with a few more. And also using the parenting plan to think about small challenges that you feel comfortable reflecting on at home. So we did some of that earlier in the modules. We talked about parenting challenges. So we want you to just get in the kind of just used to thinking about those parenting challenges as they come up. So we're also going to go over the exit ticket, and you'll notice that Deidre and I, we placed some exit tickets on the tables, but we're going to be walking around in case people need an extra one, or if you aren't finding them. So we're going to just go briefly through the prompts on the exit ticket, and we're going to ask you all to fill them out. And the first prompt here is just your overall reaction to the class. How did you feel about the class? And to use the emojis that are there to let us know, was it a good experience? Were you unsure? Was it not a good experience? We really appreciate your feedback. We also want to know if there was something new that you learned or you want to learn more about. And if you still have questions from today's session, we want to know about that too. And Deidre and I are always open to hearing your ideas or feedback that will help us improve before the next session or anything about this experience together. And on the back, we would also ask if there's any follow-up that's needed. Please let us know how Deidre and I can support you. We're here to do that and to also be there if you have any questions after this session. Deidre and I are going to hang out for a little bit. So thank you all so much for being here. We look forward to seeing you at the next session. And if there's any way that we can help have you a successful experience, or if there's things that you would like for us to just talk about, we're there for that too. So thank you all, and you will have a very good rest of your day.